Commander Jake Morrison rubbed his tired eyes as he stared at the endless stream of data flowing across his monitor. The Deep Space Monitoring Station Cerberus Prime had been his home for 3 years now, floating in the cold darkness at the edge of human territory. Most days nothing happened except the usual background radiation and distant star emissions. Today felt different, though. The signals coming from the Kepler 442 system had been getting stronger for weeks. Linda Hayes looked up from her communication console with a frown on her face. She had been working as the station's communications officer for 2 years and knew every type of signal that crossed their sensors. This one made no sense. The pattern was too regular to be natural, but too chaotic to be standard human communication. She adjusted her headset and tried another frequency filter. "Commander Morrison, you need to hear this," Linda said as she waved him over to her station. Her voice carried a tension that made Jake immediately stop what he was doing. Linda never got excited about random space noise. If she was concerned, there was a good reason. Jake walked across the small bridge of Cerberus Prime and leaned over Linda's shoulder to look at her screen. The waveform displayed in front of them showed a repeating pattern that definitely looked artificial. More importantly, it was coming from the direction of New Eden, humanity's first peaceful colony established 30 years ago in the Kepler 442 system. Dr. Peter Clark heard the conversation from his lab station and joined them at the communication console. As the station's xenobiologist, Peter spent most of his time studying alien life forms they discovered on various planets. He rarely got involved with communication issues unless they involved potential alien contact. The excitement in Linda's voice had caught his attention. "What kind of signal is it?" Jake asked as he studied the strange pattern on Linda's screen. The New Eden colony had gone silent 5 years ago after sending their last message about making contact with a friendly alien species called the Feltar. The United Earth government assumed the colonists wanted privacy to develop their new relationship with the aliens. Linda shook her head and adjusted several more controls on her console. "I'm not sure yet. The signal is very weak and keeps cutting in and out. It's definitely not standard colony communication protocol, though. The encryption is all wrong, and the frequency band is one we usually reserve for emergency broadcasts." Peter examined the data stream more carefully and noticed something that made his stomach tighten. "This looks like it might be a resistance broadcast. During the Mars Rebellion 20 years ago, the underground fighters used similar signal patterns to avoid government detection. The random breaks and frequency shifts are meant to make it harder to track." The three of them stared at each other as the implications of Peter's observations sank in. If New Eden was broadcasting resistance signals, that meant something had gone very wrong with their alien contact. Jake felt a cold knot forming in his stomach as he thought about the 30,000 colonists who had traveled to Kepler 442 to build humanity's first peaceful interstellar settlement. How long until you can clean up the signal enough to understand what they're saying? Jake asked Linda. His commander training told him to stay calm and gather information before making any decisions, but his human instincts were screaming that something terrible had happened to the colonists. Linda was already working on the problem, her fingers flying over her console as she applied various filters and amplification techniques. "Give me about an hour. The signal keeps shifting frequencies like someone is trying to avoid detection. I'll have to track it manually and piece together the message fragments." Jake nodded and turned to Peter. "Start reviewing everything we know about the Veltar. I want to know their history, their culture, their technology, everything our databases have on them. If New Eden is in trouble, we need to understand what we're dealing with." Peter was already heading back to his lab station to begin the research. The Veltar had seemed friendly during their initial contact with New Eden 5 years ago. They claimed to be a peaceful species interested in cultural exchange and mutual cooperation. The last official message from New Eden's government had been full of excitement about the opportunities for learning and growth. An hour later, Linda called Jake and Peter back to her station. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking slightly as she prepared to play the cleaned-up message. She had never seen anything like what she was about to share with them. "I managed to piece together about 60% of the transmission," Linda said quietly. "The person broadcasting identifies herself as Amy Richardson. According to New Eden's records, she was a construction engineer working on the colony's infrastructure projects. She's been broadcasting this message on a loop for the past 3 weeks." Jake steeled himself for bad news and nodded for Linda to play the recording. Amy Richardson's voice came through the speakers clearly now. though it carried a tone of desperation that made all three of them uncomfortable. "This is Amy Richardson, broadcasting from New Eden Colony. If anyone receives this message, please help us. The Veltar are not what they claimed to be. They enslaved our entire population 5 years ago. We were so trusting, so eager to make friends with our first alien contact. They waited until we were completely dependent on their technology, and then showed their true nature." Amy's voice cracked with emotion as she continued her desperate plea. "They treat us like animals. Human adults work 18-hour shifts in their mining operations. Our children have been separated from their families and placed in training facilities, where they learn to serve Veltar masters. Anyone who resists is sent to the entertainment arenas where they fight other slaves for alien amusement." The recording paused for several seconds before Amy's voice returned, now filled with barely controlled rage. "They told us we were primitive creatures who should be grateful for the opportunity to serve a superior species. They laugh at our attempts to maintain human dignity and culture. Please, if Earth receives this message, don't try to negotiate with them. They view kindness as weakness and diplomacy as an admission of inferiority." Static filled the speakers for a moment before Amy's final words came through. "I don't know how much longer I can keep broadcasting before they find me. Tell Earth that we never stopped being human. Tell them we never forgot who we are. Tell them we're waiting for rescue and we'll keep fighting until help arrives or until there are none of us left to fight." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the three humans on Cerberus Prime staring at each other in stunned silence. Jake felt something cold and terrible awakening in his chest. The peaceful exploration of space had just become something much darker. "Send this to Earth immediately," Jake ordered Linda. "Priority Alpha, direct to United Earth Government. Copy it to Terran Defense Force Command and every major colony administrator." As Linda began transmitting Amy Richardson's desperate plea across human space, Jake realized that humanity was about to learn what happened when someone made the mistake of enslaving their family. President Helen Parker sat in the emergency meeting room deep beneath the United Earth Government headquarters in Geneva. The walls were lined with screens showing data streams from across human space, but her attention was focused entirely on the audio recording playing from the central speakers. Amy Richardson's desperate voice filled the room with words that made Helen's blood run cold. General Rick Stone stood rigid next to the conference table, his weathered face growing darker with each word of Amy's transmission. He had spent 40 years in the Terran Defense Force fighting pirates and rebels, but nothing had prepared him for this. The idea that aliens had enslaved 30,000 human beings made his hands clench into fists. Admiral Carol Jensen listened to the recording while studying tactical displays on her tablet. As commander of humanity's space fleet, she was already calculating how many ships would be needed for a rescue mission to Kepler 442. The numbers were staggering, but her determination was absolute. No one enslaved humans and got away with it. Dr. Marcus Webb adjusted his glasses nervously as Amy's voice described the treatment of human children. As Earth's chief xenobiologist, he had always hoped that first contact with aliens would be peaceful and beneficial. The reality of Amy's broadcast shattered every optimistic theory he had ever developed about interstellar relations. The recording ended with Amy's final plea for help, leaving the room in heavy silence. President Parker looked around the table at her advisors and saw the same cold anger reflected in all their faces. The peaceful dream of human expansion into space had just become a nightmare that demanded justice. "Dr. Webb, I need you to verify this transmission immediately," President Parker said in a voice that carried absolute authority. "Use every method we have to confirm its authenticity. I want to be certain this isn't some kind of hoax or enemy propaganda before we take action." Dr. Webb nodded and began working on his portable analysis equipment. "I can run quantum signature analysis on the transmission data. Every communication device leaves unique quantum fingerprints that are impossible to fake. If this really came from New Eden, we'll know within an hour." General Stone moved to the tactical display and began pulling up star charts, showing the route to Kepler 442. "Madam President, even if we start mobilizing immediately, it will take months to assemble a fleet large enough for this mission. The Veltar have had 5 years to establish their defenses around New Eden." Admiral Jensen looked up from her calculations with grim determination. "We have 237 combat vessels spread across 12 systems. If we recall every ship and draft every available crew member, we can put together the largest human fleet in history. It won't be easy, but it's possible." President Parker stood and walked to the large window overlooking the city. Millions of people went about their daily lives below, unaware that humanity's first contact with aliens had become a story of slavery and suffering. She knew that within hours, news of Amy's broadcast would leak to the public and change everything. "I'm authorizing Operation Silent Thunder," President Parker announced to the room. "This is now humanity's highest priority. Every nation, every colony, every resource we have goes toward rescuing our people from New Eden. General Stone, begin full military mobilization. Admiral Jensen, I want every warship we have ready for deployment within 6 months." Dr. Webb looked up from his equipment with a grave expression. "Madam President, the quantum signature analysis confirms it. This transmission definitely came from New Eden Colony. The quantum fingerprints match their communication equipment exactly. Amy Richardson is really there, and everything she described is happening." The confirmation hit the room like a physical blow. President Parker felt something dark and terrible awakening in her chest. Humanity had always prided itself on protecting the innocent and standing up to bullies. The Veltar had made the worst possible mistake by targeting humans. General Stone was already coordinating with his staff through his communication device. "I'm ordering immediate recall of all Terran Defense Force units. Every soldier, every pilot, every support technician reports for duty immediately. We're also activating the civilian defense contractors and putting all military production facilities on maximum output." Admiral Jensen began transmitting orders to fleet commanders across human space. "I want our best captains commanding the assault vessels. Captain Steve Williams gets the UHS Retribution as fleet flagship. Captain Sarah Mitchell takes command of the heavy destroyer squadron. We're going to need our most experienced officers for this mission." Within hours, the news began spreading through human space like wildfire. Colony administrators received official notifications about Operation Silent Thunder, but the details of Amy's broadcast leaked almost immediately. Public reaction was swift and overwhelming. On Mars, the mining colonies immediately volunteered their heavy industrial ships for conversion to military use. The asteroid belt workers offered their ore haulers as supply vessels. Every human settlement from Mercury to Pluto sent messages volunteering resources, ships, and personnel for the rescue mission. Dr. Webb established a special research team to analyze every detail of Amy's transmission for intelligence about Veltar technology and tactics. Hidden in her desperate plea were crucial details about alien weaknesses, defensive positions, and the layout of New Eden's slave facilities. The public reaction was unlike anything in human history. Peaceful colonists who had never owned weapons began purchasing military equipment. Retired soldiers came out of retirement to volunteer for active duty. Children too young to fight organized fundraising efforts to support the rescue mission. President Parker addressed the world that evening, her speech broadcast to every human settlement in space. She spoke carefully, revealing only that New Eden needed assistance, but her words carried an undertone of steel that made everyone understand this was serious. "We have always believed that humanity's greatest strength is our willingness to help each other," President Parker said to billions of watching humans. "Today we learned that some of our family needs our help desperately. We will not abandon them. We will not negotiate with their captors. We will bring them home." General Stone worked through the night coordinating the largest military mobilization in human history. Ship construction facilities began working around the clock to build new vessels. Weapon manufacturers increased production by 300%. Training facilities prepared to handle the influx of new volunteers. Admiral Jensen studied tactical reports and fleet compositions, planning for humanity's first interstellar war. The Veltar had superior numbers and technology, but they had never faced human determination and fury. She intended to show them what happened when someone threatened human family. As dawn broke over Earth, President Parker stood in her office looking out at a world that had changed overnight. Humanity had awakened to discover they were not alone in the universe, and their first alien neighbors were slavers who had captured their people. The sleeping giant of humanity was stirring, and its wrath would soon reach across the stars to Kepler 442. The Veltar had enslaved the wrong species, and they were about to learn why humans had conquered their own planet through sheer determination and protective fury. Operation Silent Thunder was just beginning, but already the galaxy was about to discover what happened when humanity's family was threatened. 6 months after Amy Richardson's broadcast reached Earth, The largest human fleet in history gathered at the edge of the solar system. Admiral Carol Jensen stood on the bridge of the UHS Retribution, watching as 215 warships formed into attack formations. The sight filled her with both pride and cold determination. Captain Steve Williams commanded the assault division from the bridge of the UHS Nemesis, a massive battleship designed specifically for this mission. His crew had trained relentlessly for 6 months, practicing combat maneuvers and studying every detail they could learn about Veltar technology. Every person on his ship knew they were heading into humanity's first real war with aliens. Dr. Lisa Carter worked in her psychology lab aboard the Retribution, analyzing behavioral patterns from Amy's transmission and other intelligence they had gathered. As a combat psychologist, her job was to predict how the Veltar would react when human ships arrived at New Eden. Her findings were both encouraging and terrifying. The fleet began its journey toward Kepler 442 with ships arriving from across human space to join them. Mining colonies contributed heavy assault vessels loaded with kinetic weapons. Agricultural worlds sent supply ships crewed by volunteers who demanded the chance to help rescue their fellow humans. Even civilian freighters had been converted into troop transports and support vessels. Commander Tony Martinez ran the fleet's intelligence division from a converted science vessel. His team worked day and night to decode additional transmissions from New Eden and gather information about Veltar military capabilities. What they discovered painted a picture of an alien species that viewed slavery as a normal part of galactic civilization. During the 3-week journey to Kepler 442, more human ships joined the fleet from settlements they passed along the way. Word of the rescue mission had spread throughout human space, and nobody wanted to miss the chance to help free the enslaved colonists. By the time they reached the outer edge of the target system, the fleet numbered over 300 vessels. Dr. Carter's psychological analysis revealed disturbing information about Veltar society. The aliens operated on a strict hierarchy based on technological advancement and military power. They genuinely believed that enslaving less advanced species was their natural right and responsibility. To them, humans were simply animals that happened to be smart enough to operate machinery. Captain Williams received regular updates from Admiral Jensen about the tactical situation they would face at New Eden. Veltar defensive positions surrounded the planet like a protective shell, with over 400 alien ships in various orbital patterns. The numbers were intimidating, but human intelligence suggested that Veltar vessels were designed more for intimidation than actual combat. Commander Martinez made a breakthrough when he intercepted a Veltar diplomatic transmission intended for other alien species. The message revealed that humans were not the only enslaved species in the galaxy. Dozens of younger civilizations had been conquered and forced into servitude by more advanced aliens. The entire galactic community operated on a system where might made right. The intelligence also revealed something that made Admiral Jensen's blood boil. The Veltar had been watching human space for decades, waiting for the right moment to invade and enslave Earth's entire population. New Eden had been a test case to see how easily humans could be conquered and controlled. The aliens were already making plans for expanding their human slave operations. Dr. Carter discovered that Veltar psychology was fundamentally different from human thinking. The aliens operated as a collective hive mind where individual creativity and initiative were discouraged. They had never faced an enemy that could adapt quickly to changing battlefield conditions or think independently under pressure. This gave humans a significant tactical advantage. As the fleet approached the inner system, they detected Veltar sensor scans probing their ships. The aliens were clearly surprised by the size and organization of the human rescue force. Within hours, a Veltar diplomatic vessel approached the human fleet under a flag of truce. The alien ambassador who contacted Admiral Jensen spoke broken English with an arrogant tone that made everyone on the bridge angry. The Veltar representative treated the entire situation like a business negotiation, offering to sell the human slaves back to Earth in exchange for rare metals and advanced technology. Admiral Jensen listened to the aliens' proposal with growing fury. The Veltar ambassador seemed genuinely confused by human emotional reactions to slavery, explaining that they had treated their human property much better than they treated most enslaved species. The aliens apparently expected gratitude for their restraint. The ambassador offered specific details about the sale price for different categories of human slaves. Adult workers would cost more than children, and humans with technical skills were priced higher than general laborers. The casual way the alien discussed buying and selling human beings made everyone who heard the transmission feel sick. Captain Williams requested permission to respond to the Veltar offer, but Admiral Jensen decided to handle the communication herself. Her response was broadcast on all frequencies so that every ship in both fleets could hear her words clearly. "We are not here to negotiate," Admiral Jensen said in a voice that carried the cold fury of 3 billion humans. "We are not here to buy our people back like livestock at a market. We are here to collect our family and show the galaxy what happens when someone makes the mistake of enslaving humans." The Veltar ambassador seemed genuinely shocked by Admiral Jensen's refusal to bargain. The alien tried to explain that warfare was inefficient compared to simple economic exchange, and that humans would lose many ships fighting against superior Veltar technology. The ambassador offered to reduce the asking price if humans were concerned about the cost. Admiral Jensen terminated the communication without another word. Around New Eden, the Veltar fleet began moving into defensive positions, apparently confident that their superior numbers and advanced shields would easily repel the human attack. They had never encountered a species that fought with the desperation of parents protecting their children. Dr. Carter's final analysis was distributed to all human ship commanders. The Veltar expected a conventional battle where both sides would eventually negotiate a settlement. They could not comprehend humans who would rather die fighting than accept the enslavement of their people. This psychological blind spot would be their downfall. Captain Williams prepared his assault division for the attack, knowing that they were about to show the galaxy why humans had earned their reputation as their planet's most dangerous predators. The Veltar had made the fatal mistake of threatening human family, and they were about to learn what that meant. As the human fleet moved toward New Eden, every person aboard every ship understood that they were fighting not just for the enslaved colonists, but for the future of human independence in a galaxy that viewed them as property. The battle would determine whether humans remained free or joined the ranks of enslaved species serving alien masters. The Veltar were about to discover why humanity had conquered Earth through sheer determination and refusal to surrender, and why they were the worst possible species to enslave. The first human attack wave struck the Veltar defensive line like a hammer blow that shattered everything the aliens thought they knew about warfare. Captain Steve Williams led his assault division straight into the heart of the enemy formation, using tactics that the Veltar had never encountered before. His ships moved in coordinated pack formations, striking fast and hard before disappearing into the chaos of battle. Admiral Carol Jensen watched from the bridge of the UHS Retribution as her carefully planned attack unfolded exactly as she had hoped. The Veltar shields were designed to repel the energy weapons that most galactic species used in combat. They were completely useless against human kinetic weapons and nuclear warheads that simply punched through their defenses like they were made of paper. Captain Sarah Mitchell commanded the heavy destroyer UHS Warhound as it smashed through the Veltar defensive line using pure momentum and overwhelming firepower. Her ship absorbed enemy fire on its armored hull while returning devastating volleys that cracked alien vessels in half. The Veltar had never faced opponents who were willing to accept damage in order to deliver killing blows. The Veltar military commander tried desperately to reorganize his scattered fleet, but human tactics made no sense according to everything he had learned about galactic warfare. Human ships fought like wild animals, ignoring conventional battle doctrine in favor of aggressive attacks that prioritized maximum destruction over personal survival. His neat formation tactics crumbled under the human assault. On the surface of New Eden, Amy Richardson heard the sounds of space battle overhead and knew that her desperate broadcast had finally reached Earth. She quickly activated the hidden communication system that the human resistance had spent 5 years building throughout the slave facilities. Her message was simple but electric with hope. "This is Amy Richardson to all resistant cells. The cavalry has arrived. Begin liberation protocol immediately. Today we go home." Across New Eden, enslaved humans who had never stopped fighting suddenly erupted into coordinated rebellion. Joe Parker led a team of construction workers in seizing control of the planet's main power grid, plunging Veltar military installations into darkness. Nancy Clark coordinated the liberation of child slave camps, where human children had been separated from their families for years. The Veltar ground commanders found themselves facing uprisings in dozens of locations simultaneously. Their alien troops had never dealt with human prisoners who fought with the fury of people who had nothing left to lose. The resistance fighters used improvised weapons and their intimate knowledge of the slave facilities to devastating effect. In space, the battle continued to rage as human ships demonstrated why they were the galaxy's apex predators. The UHS Nemesis under Captain Williams destroyed 3 Veltar cruisers in as many minutes using a combination of nuclear torpedoes and kinetic bombardment that reduced the enemy vessels to expanding clouds of debris. The Veltar fleet commander made a critical error when he ordered the execution of human prisoners as leverage to force the attacking fleet to withdraw. Video footage of the executions was immediately transmitted to Admiral Jensen aboard the Retribution. Her response changed the entire nature of the battle in an instant. All human vessels, this is Admiral Jensen. The enemy has executed prisoners. Authorization code Omega Red is now in effect. No restrictions, no mercy, no survivors. The change in human behavior was immediate and terrifying. Ships that had been fighting with restraint suddenly unleashed their full destructive capabilities. Human commanders who had been following rules of engagement abandoned all limitations and began systematically annihilating every Veltar vessel they could target. Dr. Lisa Carter's psychological warfare protocols proved devastatingly effective against the Veltar hive mind mentality. Human ships began broadcasting terrifying sounds and images designed to break alien morale. The psychological attacks worked perfectly, causing Veltar crews to panic and make fatal tactical mistakes. Captain Mitchell led her destroyer squadron in a maneuver that the Veltar could not understand or counter. Her ships formed a tight formation and drove straight through the center of the alien fleet like a spear, destroying everything in their path while ignoring damage to their own vessels. The aliens had never seen such aggressive tactics. The space battle lasted exactly 6 hours and 14 minutes from first contact to the destruction of the last Veltar vessel. Not a single alien ship escaped the New Eden system. The human fleet had demonstrated their philosophy of total warfare, where enemies were not defeated but completely eliminated. Colonel Kevin Davis led the first wave of human Marines onto New Eden's surface, where they found Veltar ground forces in complete disarray. The alien troops had never faced determined human infantry, who fought with the desperation of people rescuing their families. The ground campaign became a systematic liberation of every slave facility on the planet. The human Marines discovered the full horror of what the Veltar had done to the colonists over 5 years of slavery. Adult humans worked in mines under conditions that killed dozens every month. Children had been separated from their parents and trained to serve alien masters. The worst discovery was the entertainment arenas where humans had been forced to fight other slaves for Veltar amusement. Amy Richardson was found in a hidden bunker where she had been broadcasting her resistance messages for months while avoiding Veltar security forces. When the human Marines reached her location, she was weak from malnutrition but still alive and still fighting. Her first words to her rescuers were about other humans who needed immediate medical attention. The liberation of New Eden took 18 hours from the moment the first human ships entered orbit to the surrender of the last Veltar ground installation. Every enslaved human was freed, and every alien military position was destroyed. The colonists who had disappeared 5 years ago were finally going home. Captain Williams surveyed the wreckage of the Veltar fleet from the bridge of his battle-scarred ship. His crew had performed magnificently, but the cost of victory was written in the damaged hull plating and the names of crew members who would not be returning to Earth. The battle had been won, but the war was just beginning. Admiral Jensen received reports that other human settlements had detected the battle and were already organizing their own fleets to hunt down remaining Veltar installations. The galaxy had awakened humanity's protective fury, and there would be no peace until every enslaved human was free and every slaver was destroyed. The Veltar had made the fatal mistake of assuming that humans would negotiate like other galactic species. Instead, they had discovered that humanity's response to slavery was not diplomacy or economic pressure, but complete and total warfare that ended only with the enemy's annihilation. New Eden was free, but the message that humanity sent to the galaxy that day would echo across the stars for generations. Anyone who enslaved humans would face the same fate as the Veltar fleet that now drifted as debris around the liberated planet. 3 weeks after the liberation of New Eden, Admiral Carol Jensen stood in the ruins of the main Veltar command center on the planet's surface. The alien facility had been built like a fortress, but human Marines had torn through its defenses in less than 4 hours. Now it served as humanity's temporary headquarters while they decided what to do with their victory. Amy Richardson sat across from Admiral Jensen in the makeshift meeting room, her body still weak from 5 years of slavery, but her mind sharp and focused on the future. She had spent the past weeks helping human intelligence officers understand the full scope of Veltar operations across the galaxy. What they discovered was both horrifying and motivating. Captain Steve Williams led the investigation of captured Veltar databases, working with a team of human technicians to decode alien records. The information they found revealed that the Veltar had been part of a much larger galactic network of slavers and conquerors. Dozens of species were kept in bondage across hundreds of star systems, all serving more advanced alien civilizations. Dr. Marcus Webb arrived from Earth aboard a fast courier ship to study the alien technology and biology firsthand. His examination of Veltar equipment and corpses revealed that the aliens were not particularly advanced compared to humans. Their main advantage had been their willingness to use overwhelming numbers and brutal tactics against species that tried to resist peacefully. The most disturbing discovery came when Captain Williams decoded the Veltar's long-term planning files. Earth had been marked for eventual conquest and enslavement, once humanity developed more advanced space technology. The aliens had viewed the new Eden colony as a perfect opportunity to study human psychology and determine the best methods for controlling the entire human species. Admiral Jensen realized that humanity faced a choice that would determine their future in the galaxy. They could retreat to their own space and hope that other alien species would leave them alone, or they could take aggressive action to protect themselves and other enslaved species. The evidence suggested that isolation would only delay the inevitable. President Helen Parker arrived at New Eden aboard the command ship UHS Liberty, bringing with her the full authority of the United Earth government. Her first action was to promote Admiral Jensen to Supreme Commander of all human space forces. Her second action was to authorize the expansion of Operation Silent Thunder into a galaxy-wide campaign. Amy Richardson provided crucial intelligence about other Veltar slave worlds that she had learned about during her years in captivity. The aliens had bragged to their human slaves about their other conquests, never imagining that the information would one day be used against them. She helped human planners identify dozens of systems where enslaved beings needed liberation. Captain Sarah Mitchell led the first liberation mission to a nearby Veltar outpost, where 3 different alien species were held in slavery. The human assault was swift and devastating, with the enemy defenders overwhelmed before they could send distress signals. The freed aliens were amazed that any species would risk their own lives to help strangers. The liberated species provided even more intelligence about the galactic slavery network. Dr. Webb learned that the entire galaxy operated on a strict hierarchy where technological advancement gave species the right to enslave others. Younger civilizations were viewed as resources to be harvested, rather than potential allies to be respected. Word of human liberation campaigns spread rapidly through alien communication networks. Species that had been enslaved for generations suddenly heard rumors of warriors from a distant system who fought to free the oppressed. The psychological impact was enormous, inspiring slave uprisings on worlds that humans had never even visited. President Parker made a decision that would reshape galactic civilization. Standing in the ruins of the Veltar Command Center, she recorded a message that was broadcast across the galaxy through captured alien communication networks. Her words were translated into dozens of languages and transmitted to every known star system. This is President Helen Parker of the United Earth government speaking to all species in the galaxy. Humanity offers protection to any civilization seeking freedom from slavery and oppression. We do not seek to conquer or rule over others. We seek only to ensure that all thinking beings have the right to determine their own destiny. The message continued, with a warning that made slaveholding species across the galaxy reconsider their positions. However, any species or government that attempts to enslave humans or our allies will face complete annihilation. We have demonstrated our capabilities at New Eden and other Veltar installations. We are prepared to demonstrate them again wherever necessary. The broadcast ended with footage of the Veltar homeworld's military facilities being systematically destroyed by human forces. Captain Williams had led a strike force deep into enemy territory, not to attack civilians or cities, but to eliminate every weapon factory, military base, and government installation. The message was clear. Humanity could reach anyone, anywhere. The response to President Parker's broadcast was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of enslaved species requested human protection and assistance. Other alien governments, former members of the Galactic hierarchy, desperately tried to negotiate non-aggression treaties with Earth. The galaxy's power structure began collapsing as species realized they no longer had to accept slavery as normal. Amy Richardson was appointed as humanity's first ambassador to liberated species, her experience as both victim and resistance fighter, making her the perfect person to understand the needs of newly freed populations. Her first diplomatic mission was to a system where 4 different species had overthrown their Veltar overlords after hearing about human liberation campaigns. The transformation of galactic civilization happened faster than anyone had expected. Within 6 months, the ancient system of slavery based on technological superiority was replaced by a new order where humanity served as protector and mediator. Human ships patrolled former slave worlds, not as conquerors, but as guardians ensuring that freedom was maintained. Dr. Webb established research stations throughout liberated space, working with alien scientists to develop defensive technologies that would prevent future enslavement. The cooperation between species that had never been allowed to interact freely led to advances that benefited everyone involved in the alliance. Captain Williams commanded a permanent patrol fleet that responded to distress calls from across the galaxy. His ships carried the message that slavery was no longer tolerated and that any species attempting to return to the old ways would face humanity's wrath. The mere presence of human vessels was usually enough to maintain peace. Amy Richardson sent her final broadcast to Earth from her new embassy on a former slave world. We came to the stars seeking friends and found a galaxy full of suffering. But we also found that humanity's greatest strength is not our weapons or our technology. It is our refusal to abandon each other and our willingness to extend that protection to anyone who needs it. The galaxy had learned that humanity's reputation was exactly as terrifying as advertised, but also that their protection was worth more than any amount of advanced technology or military power. The species that had once ruled through fear now lived in terror of human justice, while the formerly enslaved prospered under human guardianship. The broadcast that had awakened humanity's darkest wrath had ultimately created the galaxy's brightest hope for peace and freedom.